Hello and welcome to part 3 of my Protection Warrior tanking guide for World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. This is a follow-up to parts 1 and 2 in this series, and I'll leave a link for those in the description below if you want to check that video out. Parts 1 and 2 are designed for people who are just kind of wanting to step into the shoes of a Protection Warrior and try it out for the first time. This video, part 3, is for people who are fairly comfortable with the basics of tanking on a Protection Warrior and want to learn some advanced concepts. Most of what I go over in this video will be applicable primarily to dungeons, but you can take some of the concepts and things that you learn here into raids. The general recommendation I have for raids is learn the raid. Learn the pools, learn the trash, learn the bosses, and then in each of those cases there are going to be different situations where different tactics, techniques, skills, and things like that are going to make you a better tank. As far as getting into a dungeon, especially on lower difficulties like normal and heroic, then you can be a little more general with your use, just kind of queue up, get into a dungeon, and roll with it most of the time. So that's what we're going to be covering in this video, so let's go ahead and get into it. So in the first video, we sorted out our abilities, we went through our spell book, we created a talent build, mainly focused on passive talents and not trying to add any complexity to what we already had to learn how to get used to. In this video, we're going to go ahead and tweak that talent build just a little bit. So this was the talent build that we used before. We're going to make just a few tweaks here. So we're going to stick with Into the Fray for the haste. This is going to be really good in dungeons. Crackling Thunder, we're going to keep that there for that increased thunderclap radius. We're going to switch from Best Served Cold to Unstoppable Force. Now we took Best Served Cold just because this kind of helped us when we were using Revenge anytime we got to cast it for free, and it was something we could kind of forget about and not really focus on. Now we're going to take Unstoppable Force. Unstoppable Force is a talent that says Avatar increases the damage of Thunderclap by 100% and reduces its cooldown by 50%. Now this is a multi-layered talent, so let's quickly take a look at the two abilities that are linked in here. So Avatar, if we remember, is one of our cooldowns that I said was a little more offensive in nature. It transforms you into Colossus for 20 seconds, causing you to deal 20% increased damage, and removes all roots and snares, and it generates 20 rage. So for the duration of Avatar, we're going to increase the damage of Thunderclap by 100% and reduce its cooldown by 50%. So Thunderclap is our big AoE ability that we usually cast right after we charge into battle to make sure we get aggro on all the enemies around us. This has a 5.6 second cooldown. Blast all enemies within 12 yards for 2400 damage and reduce their movement speed by 20% for 10 seconds. It also generates 5 rage. Okay, so now it's going to deal double damage and have half the cooldown, which means when we hit Avatar, we can spam Thunderclap for massive damage, massive threat, maintain aggro on our enemies, and get some rage generation off of it. But there's another layer to this, and the reason for that is because of the proc for Shield Slam. Thunderclap has a 30% chance to reset the cooldown on Shield Slam, meaning that not only does Avatar allow us to cast Thunderclap more often for more damage, but because we're casting Thunderclap so much more often, we have that many more chances to be able to cast Shield Slam, reset the cooldown of it, on it, deal that nice chunk of damage that it does, and generate rage, which is going to help us to use Ignore Pain and play defensively, or use some of that rage offensively, which we'll talk about in a minute. So this now adds a layer of complexity to the build, and now you have to think about, okay, when do I use Avatar? Do I want to, just spam Thunderclaps really hard? Do I want to make sure that I'm weaving Thunderclaps and Shield Slams? What is my goal with using Avatar now? And it turns Avatar into something more active. Instead of hitting the button and just going, okay, I've got 20% increased damage, now it's hitting that button and know, okay, I have a thing that I need to do within these next 20 seconds. And so I need to execute it well. The next talent we're going to take is Bolster. Bolster, before this, in our previous build, we had Never Surrender. Ignore Pain will prevent up to 100% more damage based on your missing health. Now, this talent we chose just to kind of help you out, make sure that you get that little bit more damage mitigation when you're trying to learn how to play as a protection warrior. But the way this works is kind of like if you're missing 30% health, you get 30% more damage prevention on Ignore Pain. So it's like a scaling thing, and you have to be really low to get a good benefit out of it. And so what we want to do is we want to switch over to Bolster. Bolster says Last Stand's cooldown is reduced by 60 seconds, and it additionally causes you to block all melee attacks. Okay, so Last Stand is one of our nice defensive cooldowns. We'll check it out right here. It has a 2-minute cooldown because we have this ability. Normally it has a 3-minute cooldown, so now it's going to have a 2-minute cooldown. It increases our maximum health by 30% for 15 seconds, and it heals us for that amount as well. Now with Bolster, we will block all melee attacks when we use Last Stand as well. Now if we check out our critical block, we get increased chance to block via that, and with the increased block we have the chance to block for twice the amount. So when we're able to hit Last Stand with that 100% block chance, we're blocking constantly. That gives us a higher chance to get that critical block as well, and that will tie into our shield block getting critical hits, dealing damage, reducing damage. So all around, it's just a very good talent for us to have, especially with a minute reduction on Last Stand. That is absolutely insane for a talent. It's very good. We're going to stick with Rumbling Earth, but now we're really going to want to pay attention to using it. When Shockwave strikes at least 3 targets, its cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. Especially in dungeons, you're almost always going to have at least 3 enemies that you're fighting. The only thing with this talent is making sure that your positioning is right so that you hit all 3 of those targets with Shockwave. Now, Shockwave was our ability that sends out a wave of force and a cone in front of us, which does some damage and stuns enemies for 2 seconds. It's got a 40-second cooldown, but if we manage to hit 3 enemies with it, that cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. And what this means is we can hit that damage, hit those stuns more often. That helps us mitigate damage. That stops the enemy from attacking our party. It's just all around really, really good. Sometimes you'll be in a situation where you don't have 3 enemies, but maybe you want to cast Shockwave to interrupt a powerful ability or something. That's okay. It's not the end of the world if we don't trigger this talent, but we want to trigger it because then we get to use Shockwave much more often, and it is a awesome ability to be using in dungeons. We're also going to stick with Booming Voice. We took this in our initial build. It causes Demoralizing Shout to generate 40 rage and increase the damage you deal to affected targets by 15%. But now we really want to think of this as a button we can push to generate rage when we need rage. Now we'll still want to use Demoralizing Shout when we need the damage reduction from it. So if we need that 20% damage reduction because we're fighting a bunch of enemies, or maybe someone pulled an extra group or something, we still use it there, but we want to try to get the benefit of using that rage, generating that rage to cast our Ignore Pains with as well. Or even our shield blocks if we're a bunch of those enemies we are fighting are melee attackers. And we're also going to stick with Anger Management. So every 10 rage we spend, we reduce the remaining cooldown on Avatar, Last Stand, Shield Wall, and Demoralizing Shout by 1 second. Now, we talked about Demoralizing Shout, right? So Demoralizing Shout has a 45-second cooldown. This is going to reduce the cooldown on that ability, which gives us the ability to generate rage, deal more damage, and reduce the damage that enemies are dealing to us. Huge cooldown, and being able to reduce that is awesome. Shield Wall is our big, oh crap, awesome damage mitigation button that we push. It reduces all damage we take by 40% for 8 seconds. It has a 4-minute cooldown, which is pretty long, but When we use it, we'll be able to use it sooner by choosing this talent. With Last Stand, we already talked about all the benefits of Last Stand, and now that we've reduced Last Stand down to a 2-minute cooldown, getting 1 second off of that for every 10 rage we spend means that Last Stand is usable about every fight, every other fight now, and that is a big, big deal. And then finally, Avatar, which we talked about at the very beginning here, we're going to reduce the cooldown on that as well, which means we're going to hit that for that increased damage, that thunderclap spam, and then those shield slam procs as well. So this is the talent build we're going to use. It's not too different from what we used in parts 1 and 2, but there are a couple changes, and the way that you think about each of those talents is going to be different as we go forward. Alright, so we're just going to take a look at a couple of the things that this talent build will change as far as your rotation goes. So the first thing we're going to look at is how this Unstoppable Force works with Avatar, Thunderclap, and Shield Slam. Alright, so if we are in battle, we're going to charge in. We're going to try to generate some rage here. We can use our Demoralizing Shout for that. So we're going to cast Avatar, and we're going to go ahead and Thunderclap. And you're going to see that cooldown is pretty short. It's about 3 seconds. And every time we do that, we get a chance to reset that cooldown on Shield Slam. And you can see how we're getting a bunch of resets there. Alright, and then Avatar is gone. But now for each rage that we spend, so if we go over here and we just spend some rage, let's say we just cast some Revenge, you're going to see the cooldown on Avatar going down quite quickly. So we'll come back and look at that again once everything in that particular rotation is off cooldown. The next thing we're going to look at is Bolster. We don't really need to look at because these enemies aren't going to attack us. You know, it will block attacks. And the other place that will come in handy is, you know, anytime we need that healing from Last Stand as well. Rumbling Earth is pretty straightforward. If we can get up here and make our Shockwave hit 3 targets, you'll see that I think we only hit 2 that time. It's kind of hard to hit 3 against these target dummies, but instead of that 40-second cooldown, we will have a 25-second cooldown. And that's really all there is to it. That's really all that's changing as far as what you're going to do with your rotation is weaving in that Avatar. You can see it's already off cooldown again with a 1.5-minute cooldown plus the combination of Anger Management. We're going to be able to use this practically every fight. So the next thing to talk about is how to play aggressively as a tank, as a protection warrior. Now, when I say aggressively, I don't mean how to run in there like a moron and just, you know, pull 3, 4, 5 groups, but how to set an aggressive pace. Like, what do you do to keep the flow of combat going? A lot of that has to do with paying attention to your party, paying attention to your surroundings, and just kind of getting a feel for how your group is doing. So if you know that your group is struggling, like let's say that you pull 1 group or 2 groups, it's taking a while to kill them, maybe your healer's not doing so well, or your DPS isn't getting those enemies down, it's up to you to set that pace for what you're going to do, to pull a group, get it down, pull a group, get it down. But if you go in there and your healer is rocking it, keeping you topped off, keeping the party topped off, your DPS is in there just murdering stuff, then you have the opportunity to set the pace much more aggressively. And the way that you do that is by what I call chain pulling is one of the ways you can do that, which is not to say that you go in and pull a bunch of groups at the same time, but just as you're winding down, as you've gotten, you know, say you're fighting 4 enemies. Well, you get 2 of them down, pull the next group, grab the next group. You can do that easily. You can taunt and get a group to come over to you. You can use your heroic throw. You could even like intercept in and then turn around and just heroic leap back to where you were at, get them to come over to you. You can intercept in, thunderclap, heroic leap back. That's setting a little bit more of an aggressive pace, or just understanding that maybe your team doesn't really need downtime in between each pull. So as they're on the last enemy, charge into the next one and set up that pull right there where that group is at. So you can definitely do that. Um, and generally, what you're going to want to make sure that you do is you're paying attention to your healer and your DPS. That's really the most important thing, and making sure that you don't get too aggressive and pull too much stuff, but setting a good pace. And like I said, with the Protection Warrior, the thing you have to keep in mind is that sometimes if you're setting the aggressive pace, especially if you're playing with a group of random people, that they won't always know what you're doing. You might not be on voice comms with them. They might not have experience playing with you. So what you have to do is you have to know, I've got this stuff to take care of myself if for some reason this goes wrong. So if you're setting the pace, you're going to want to make sure you've got some oh crap buttons, whether that's your shield wall, your last stand, whether you're able to get those ignore pains up, or you've got a victory rush to give yourself a little bit of healing. Then you just need to know, like, okay, if for some reason my healer had to get up and go to the bathroom, or fell asleep at the keyboard, or my DPS starts struggling for some reason, or some crazy mechanic happens and someone just dies out of nowhere, you have to understand that, okay, I still need to make sure that I don't die, because if I die, everything else wipes. And that kind of leads us into the next topic, which is playing aggressively versus defensively, or offensively versus defensively, and knowing when to switch. A lot of that has to do with your group. So what we're going to talk about now is how to focus on offense and how to focus on defense as a Protection Warrior. So let's say that our group is doing really well, and for the most part, we're able to throw up an occasional ignore pain. We're using our demoralizing shout, keeping some of that damage reduction down. Our healer's having no problem keeping us topped off. That's a situation where we can probably play more aggressively. You don't have to focus so much on surviving. You can focus on trying to help deal damage, trying to help the dungeon group progress faster by killing each of these groups of enemies faster. And generally, what you're going to want to do on a Protection Warrior is you're just going to change up a little bit. So typically, with our normal kind of rotation, we want to go in, we want to thunderclap, we want to get our shield slam on cooldown, so that now when we're casting Devastate and thunderclap and all that stuff, we have the chance to proc that cooldown reset on shield slam. Anytime thunderclap or shield slam are off cooldown, we're using that. When we get our free revenge, we use our free revenge, and then we generally want to spend our rage on either shield block or ignore pain. So if you watched the first video, you know that I basically said don't cast revenge unless it's free, and that has a lot to do with your rage management. The other time you can cast revenge is if you just have a bunch of rage and you don't have anything to do with it and you just need to dump some, you can cast revenge. But when you switch to offense, that is when you can start to use revenge anytime it's off cooldown. So now what I would do is I would go ahead and charge in, get that thunderclap. You still need to maintain threat on your enemy. Just because you're going offensive doesn't mean that your job as a tank is over. You still have to tank, you still have to maintain threat. But now I'm hitting thunderclap on cooldown, I'm hitting shield slam, I'm spending my rage on revenge to hit all the targets in front of me. Anytime revenge comes off cooldown, I'm spamming that thing. The other thing that I'm making sure that I'm doing, cast that demoralizing shout for that 20% damage reduction. Get that, or damage increase. Get that avatar in there for that 20% damage increase. Boom, now you're doing 40% increased damage. You're hitting those revenges. You're, dishing out some nice AoE damage all around you. Use your shockwave for damage. Don't worry about the stun. Try to hit 3 people so you get that reduced cooldown. But man, you should not be hitting ignore pain or devastate or shield block unless you absolutely have to, or the tide of the fight turns against your favor. If for some reason that does happen, then that is when I recommend you hit Last Stand as a oh crap button, because you're going to get that 30% maximum health heal off of that. You've got your shield wall, you know, if you really, really need it, and then you can switch to Ignore Pain. So that kind of rolls us into, well, what do I need to do if for some reason things are going wrong and I just need to survive? Well, the first thing, if things are going wrong, you've got a tank. You have to get those enemies off of your teammates so that they can focus on what they need to do. So your healer can get back to healing, so your damage dealers can focus in on a target and get them down. So you go into full defensive mode. And that means generating that rage. That means maintaining threat against those enemies. And that may mean that now the only thing you're spending rage on is Ignore Pain or Shield Block. Like, you don't spend pain, your rage on Revenge. It means using using your Demoralizing Shout when it's the best time for you to get that damage reduction. It means you may have to pick a friendly target and intercept over them to help them out. Now, instead of using your intercept offensively against an enemy, you're using it to help your party members out. Intercept over to your healer, get those enemies off of them. Use that taunt. Anytime that victory rush comes up, use it. Use Shockwave as a stun now. If you've got to hit Intimidating Shout just to get some enemies to cower in fear for a couple seconds, then that's what you got to do. So you focus, you turn your attention to, I need to live, and I need to make sure that all the enemies are attacking me. This is especially relevant when you're playing with a group of just random people as well. But that's how you do it. If you want to switch to offense, build up that rage, get in there, make sure you're still using your shield slams, you're popping Demoralizing Shout and Avatar for that increased damage. You're spending your rage on Revenge, just dumping rage into Revenge every chance you get. Don't care about Ignore Pain, don't care about Devastate, don't care about Shield Block. All we want to do is pump out damage. If you get a victory rush, use it for the damage. And if you want to go defensive, like I said, you might have to use these intercepts on your party members. You're basically just thunderclapping, trying to keep everything on control. You're using Demoralizing Shout for the damage reduction. You're putting up your shield wall. You're using Last Stand to heal yourself and get those guaranteed blocks from the talent we chose. Shockwave to stun, you know, taunts to peel things off of your party members. If you've got everybody's attention on you and you feel like you're about to die and you've got a clear avenue, heroic leap out of there. You know, and when the enemies get about to you, just go ahead and boom, charge back over to a party member. You know, use these tools, use your mobility, one of your strengths as a warrior, to help yourself survive. And that's really what you're going to want to do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of take these concepts, we're going to take them into a dungeon and show them off there. Now, for this video, I am still going to be clicking, which means I'm not going to be playing like a professional, but I'm going to be taking the time to try to explain these concepts to you as they come up in the dungeon. I don't click when I play. I use a weird keybind that if I did, you wouldn't be able to tell what the heck I was doing, and I don't think that helps you. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. You're going to see stuff like my rage is going to cap, or I may not hit that shield slam right away, or I might miss a proc or something, but that's all because I'm trying to play in a manner that allows you to see what I'm doing instead of just see flashy buttons everywhere. So I'm going to queue up for a random dungeon, and I'll cut to that, and I'll see you there. Alright, so we're heading into the Temple of Atal Dazar. And we're going to do a couple of things here. We're going to try to shift back and forth from offense, defense, all that kind of stuff. The first thing I will tell you is that if you're playing with a group of random people, the first couple of pulls, just kind of feel out the group. Alright? Oh, I just I hit my my mount hotkey. That doesn't exist in this build. Alright, so we're going to do, you know, kind of our standard stuff here. Go in. We're going to thunderclap. We're going to hit that shield slam. We got a free revenge there. We'll go ahead and hit ignore pain. We kind of want to see what our group is up to here. How well we're doing. Judging from this pool, I'm going to say, you know, either some of our DPS wasn't quite caught up, or maybe they're a little undergeared. Alright, so they're going to pull instead of letting me pull. So I can already tell that I'm probably not going to enjoy this group very much. And part of this is they're not letting me set the pace. And the thing about that is I was ready to pull right away. And I would have pulled right away. But they decided to take that leadership from me. And generally speaking, that does not make for a happy tank. You know, let me do my job, you do your job. Alright, so in this case, we've got a Pat here. We got a couple other things here. We're just going to charge up in here. And for this fight, we're going to go full defensive, okay? So we're going to Demoralizing Shout. We're going to go ahead and hit our Shield Slam. We're spending our Rage on Ignore Pain. We've got our Rallying Cry if we really need it. Now this guy here is attacking the healer. We could have taunted them off. Now sometimes you will get enemies that will just randomly charge your party members, and there's really nothing you could do about that. This guy over here is not paying a whole lot of attention to me. You will also get focus targets, where one of your party members will become the focus of one of the enemies. And it doesn't matter what you do, you can't like taunt them off, you can't do anything like that. So there we went kind of full defensive mode. I did let my rage cap a few times there, but you know, once again, that's mostly just... Alright, so we need to... Yeah, the rage capping, what I was trying to say there is it's mostly just me trying to explain things, which is a little harder to do right now. Alright, so from what I can tell here, we've got kind of an impatient team. And so I'm probably going to want to focus on being a little bit more defensive here in general. Alright, somebody pulled those, so we're going to go ahead and use our Demoralizing Shout. Go ahead and use our Ignore Pain. We want to try to prevent ourselves from rage capping as much as possible. So when we build up there, if we feel like we don't need an Ignore Pain, we want to cast a Revenge. Unfortunately, I don't feel like this is the ideal group to show this stuff for, but that's how this happens. Alright, dude. Well, obviously, this person is not worried at all about fighting these enemies, so... Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to show you how to set the pace here, because I don't have a choice. These guys are just pulling, whether I like it or not, so... Alright. We're going to go full defensive mode here. This looks like a pretty big pull. So we're going to go in, we're going to Demo Shout, we're going to spend our Rage on Ignore Pain. We're going to go ahead and we're going to Avatar into Thunderclap, Shield Slam. We're going to Free Revenge. Use our Rage on Ignore Pain. Thunderclap. Thunderclap. Free Revenge. Ignore Pain, get that back up. Free Revenge. We're just Thunderclapping and Shield Slamming here pretty much. Alright, so that went fairly smoothly. And you should see our demo shout is almost off of cooldown, and our avatar is pretty darn close. I'm just going to heroic throw on this boss here. Alright. So we got a couple of ads, not a big deal. We'll demoralizing shout again, go straight into ignore pain. Now, if we have the opportunity in this fight, you know, we're definitely going to go ahead and use our last stand, if we can. So we're having some rage generation issues here. That is a good time to use our... We want to make sure we get those shield slam procs going. Our avatar is back off of cooldown. We could go ahead and use that if we want. Thunderclap, shield slam. Thunderclap, try to get that shield slam again. There we go. Thunderclap. We got plenty of rage. We're doing all right on our health here, so I would honestly just start spending my rage on revenge. Maybe let my health dip a little bit because I know I have last stand if I need it. So here we go. Our rage is getting high again. We've got a demoralizing shout again. There we go. Hey, got some pants. All right.
You have only succeeded in strengthening my hold on the temple.
I just hit my mount keybind again. Alright, so you can see how there I kind of like tried to shift back and forth between the different tactics of being offensive and defensive. Like right here, I know I'm waiting for my party to catch up. So I'll go ahead and play a little defensive. I can use my last stand there. Now, as much as possible, you want to try to hit those shield slams first when they get that reduced cooldown. Got a free victory rush there. So you can see, like, I started out going pretty defensive there because I knew I was waiting for my party to catch up to me. But then after that, I was able to switch to a little bit more of an offensive tactic. So like right here, I'm not worried about losing health on this particular group of enemies. So, you know, I won't worry about casting Ignore Pain. If my rage builds up, I will cast Revenge instead. Alright. So we're going to pull these guys with a heroic throw, and then we're also going to charge in. So once again here, I'm going to go a little bit defensive. I'm going to pop it Ignore Pain. This gives me some time to try to get aggro on everything without worrying about dying. Go ahead and get that Ignore Pain up again. Alright, we're starting to lose a little bit of health here. Looks like we've got some enemies kind of randomly bouncing around here. But because of our talent, we almost have our last stand off of cooldown now. So we can go ahead and pop that when it comes up, get that going. It looks like what might have been happening is this ranged caster here was attacking our healer. Now, like I said, I'm not going to be playing, you know, my best for this because I'm trying to make sure I explain things and I'm clicking when I normally use cooldowns or keybinds. I don't know what I'm saying here. All right. I'm not really going to worry about that other little guy who ran back there. So we can, you know, jump back here and kind of use our heroic leap. I could break this sphere if I wanted to, but it's just not a big deal against this group of enemies. We had one elite and a bunch of regulars, so just not a big deal. Alright, so we're getting that shield slam. Once again, this is not a group that I'm going to worry about playing defensive against, so I'm going to use my rage on revenge. Now here we've got a full regular pull, so I'll go in, I'll throw out an Ignore Pain right there at the beginning, and then I'm just going to focus on, in this case my health is doing pretty well, so I'm going to go full aggressive here and just start casting as many revenges as I can to get that extra damage in. If I feel like I'm starting to take a little bit of damage or my healer's starting to struggle, you know, as long as I've got the rage, I can always go ahead and throw in another Ignore Pain, you know, like right there. Or, in this case, I'm hitting these Victory Rush procs, so I can use those to heal myself. Cast that Demoralizing Shout for a little bit of extra DPS there. And you can see it's pretty easy to rage cap, even just casting Revenge because of the cooldown on it. Sometimes I hit Revenge and then I get a proc on Shield Slam and that puts me right back up to full. So if that's the case where you're going to be capping on rage like that, I mean, you might as well throw an Ignore Pain out there. So in this pool, I'm definitely going to Ignore Pain. Get that Shield Slam on cooldown. We're going to Ignore Pain again. We can go ahead and cast Avatar here. Try to get some procs on this stuff. I may even cast Rallying Cry here to give everybody a little bit more health. Alright, we're going to get Ignore Pain. We're going to Last Stand. I should be looking at my screen, but it's hard to do when you're clicking on the mouse here, so I know I was standing in some stuff there. Blech. Blech. Alright. Alright, so I'm probably going to have to stop the explanations against this particular boss just because he has a lot of ground effects, so just bear with me here. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to start using all of our cooldowns because this is a boss fight, so there's no reason we shouldn't be. I jumped out of my way before I could, Alright, so we've got Avatar up again. We're going to wait until our Thunderclap is off cooldown. That way we can Avatar and immediately go into a Thunderclap. We want to get that Shield Slam going so that we can get those resets, if possible. We got our Demoralizing Shout. Let's get that up. Go ahead and we want to keep Ignore Pain up in this fight. And I am trying my best to move him into a position where my DPS can still deal damage to him. Especially the melee DPS. Alright, so that was fairly smooth. Man, I hit that keybind for my mouse again. Oh, that's funny.
There will be no coming back.
I want to ride the dragon. Oh, goodness. Oh, no. That could be bad. Okay, cool. We made it. So here, I'm going to give we're about to fight this boss. So I'm going to make sure that my DPS can get his health back up. Now everybody's good to go. Alright. So with the distance he is away, I'm going to go ahead and Heroic Throw. And I'm going to get that Intercept in there. That's going to build me up to an Ignore Pain pretty quickly. We're going to use those cooldowns. We're going to start using our Thunderclap. We're not getting a whole lot of procs on our Shield Slam there. So I could cast Berserker's Rage and get rid of that pretty easily there. We're going to hit that Shield Slam. Now this is what I mean, like, Razan sets his sights on Faithless, so there's nothing I can do about him attacking that character. That's just a mechanic of the fight. So, alright, I want to pick up these ads here. Go ahead and Ignore Pain. I could Last Stand just to help my healer out a little bit. Go ahead and use that Demoralizing Shout. Okay, we got Feared again. This is normally where I would have my Will of the Forsaken on cooldown. Alright, so we want to pick up that Raptor there. And that one is gone. Okay, cool. So those were just ads.
Razan was a powerful Loa. Perhaps you will make a worthy sacrifice.
I did it again.
Zoo.
a lot of times in a situation like this where we're not fighting any elites at all, like, I don't even waste my cooldowns. Usually you've got a mage or somebody who will get in there and just like blizzard them down or arcane blast. You know, like, these guys aren't worried about this. I could definitely help deal some damage as much as I can, but I definitely don't want to waste like my demoralizing shout or avatar or anything on these kinds of enemies. Every time you see that pop up, I'm hitting my mount key. So and even here, you know, with oh, he mind controlled that thing.
Impressive. You made it farther than I thought. But I will still be drinking your blood.
We had a couple people run ahead of us, so slowed us down just a wee bit. Alright, so we're trying not to hit these spiders because they just deal a chunk of damage to you. Alright, 2, 3, everybody's here, so we're gonna go. Alright, we're definitely gonna get Ignore Pain, and we're gonna go right into an Avatar Thunderclap thing here. Anytime we get that Rage right now, we're just gonna use it on Ignore Pain. Alright, so he's casting a Soul Rend. Go ahead and cast that. Don't think I did Battle Shout on anyone. That's a new mistake. Alright, so we're doing a really good job here. The DPS is doing a really good job, so I'm just going to go, you know, as full offense here as I can and just use everything I can to deal some extra damage. Get that demo shout back up, you know, spin that rage on revenge. I'm going to go ahead and spin some on Ignore Pain just because I have too much. And boom, right there. We didn't have any real issues against that boss, so that's one of those opportunities to go like full offense as much as you can there. So that's the dungeon. I'll go ahead and pop out of this. So hopefully this has helped you kind of, you know, figure out how to take your tanking to like the next level. I think after this, it really just comes down to, you know, getting a good feel for your tank and then going into raids now. And for each of the fights, knowing the fights. Like some fights, you're going to want to save, you know, like your shield wall, which I didn't need to use at all in that dungeon, but I could have, you know, just for the heck of it if I wanted to. But didn't really need to. But some fights in raids, you're going to want to wait. You're going to want to save shield wall for a particular moment when you know the boss is going to hit you really hard and pop that there. Sometimes you're going to want to save that last stand for a particular moment when you know you need some recovery. You know, it's all about learning when and where to use your abilities, but having a good grasp on the fundamentals and then having a good grasp on like when to change the flow of the fight from offense to defense and back again is going to ensure that you do the best job you can as a tank. Because if you go into a dungeon with a group like I just had, you know, they're wanting to pull stuff before I did. The healer was doing a pretty good job. The DPS were really getting stuff down fairly quickly. If you go in that with this mindset of I'm the tank, and I'm going to use my, you know, my shield block and my Ignore Pain, and I'm just going to survive. That was a situation where most of the time during that run, I didn't need to do that. All I needed to do was make sure that the enemies were focused on me, and then everybody else could do their job. And because the healer and the DPS were doing good jobs, doing their jobs well, it gave me the freedom to not worry so much about my health bar and instead say, what can I do to help us go faster, to help us kill things? And there were times in there where I had to say, okay, my health is getting low, so something's probably going on with my healer. Let me use my last stand and get that heal. Let me get those guaranteed blocks. or, you know, we're about to make this big pull, so I'm going to go into it knowing that the first thing I want to do is generate enough rage to cast Ignore Pain. Or I want to hit that demo shout like right away and make sure that I get that 20% damage reduction across the board. You didn't see me use Shield Block a whole bunch in that dungeon. Shield Block is a ability that I tend to forget about when the content is too easy. Don't forget about Shield Block as you get into harder and harder content. Shield Block is also a way to boost the damage on your Shield Slam. Most of the time, when I wanted to output that damage, I was thinking Avatar Thunderclap Shield Slam. So that's one of the reasons I didn't work in the Shield Block there. But don't forget about that. You saw how sometimes, you know, being able to throw your weapon and then charge in, you know, that's going to help you get a good amount of threat, especially on a boss. You throw your weapon, then you charge in. You've got, you know, that double combo of initiative, of pulling that target, getting a good amount of threat on them. And that's really nice. If you get the opportunity when you're knocked away or the boss leaps away to intercept again, that generates more rage for you. So these are just some of the concepts that you can use to improve your tanking ability. And I will be following up all these videos with a example of me tanking when I have my keybinds and all that kind of good stuff. So look forward to those. Hopefully this video has helped you. If you like the video, want to see more content like this, hit the like button, leave a comment, whatever you want to do there. Either way, I hope you're having a good time in Battle for Azeroth, and thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next video.